I'm Jarrett Carpenter. This is Future Signal. Back on the pod is Jon Grinnell. Jon, what's up, man?
Howdy, howdy. Happy Friday. How's it going? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me again.
It's going. As you said before we started to record, we have so much to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold us to 1 hour because I think we could probably talk for 3 or 4, but I have to get back to some work today. You have to maybe do the same. We also have lives, right? We can't just talk about crypto for 25 hours a day. So where do you want to start? Because there's a bunch. Maybe actually I'll share some personal stuff. I don't know if you know this, but and for people watching, you may or may not know this. I was working for Compass Mining, which is a mining company, and I'm now working for Blockworks, which has changed my media landscape a lot. And I'm actually very excited. And actually, if you're listening to this and you want to go to Permissionless in Brooklyn, I actually have a code. So Future10, and you'll get 10% off. That's through Future Signal. So if you're trying to go to Permissionless in Brooklyn, which is coming up at the end of June, use the code Future10. It's the first time I've ever done a shill in over like 250 episodes, but there it is. So anyways, I don't know if you know that. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, it's exciting for me because Blockworks is just a media company. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They're just writers, podcasts, interviews, video. Like that is what they do. And then obviously they have conferences. They have the Digital Asset Summit, and then they also have Permissionless. Those are their two kind of flagships. So it's been very interesting to kind of get into that ecosystem because it's very different from Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining is also its own little thing, but Bitcoin mining is like kind of like a cult within the cult of Bitcoin. And so it's a lot more expansive, I think. I think there's just so many more touch points I'm getting able to kind of be near. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you. So now you know I'm at Blockworks, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, use the code Future10 if you want to go to Permissionless and get 10% off. Once again, first time ever doing a shill. I'm talking a lot. Passing the mic to you. Where are we starting? Because there's a lot to talk about.
Oh my gosh, where should we start? I mean, we could go with the obvious route, which is probably top of mind for a lot of listeners here, is just the price action, right? So we're seeing an all-time high. I think it hit yesterday. What was it? Like 111 for BTC?
111.7, 111.5. It still hasn't hit 112. And I want it to hit 112 because I'm getting a meme ready on Future Signal stuff that is from the band 112, which is like an R&B band from the early 2000s. Anyway, of course, classic. So I think Bitcoin's around 11.5. Where is it right now? I'm looking. It's at 109.4. So I guess we should sell because it's tanking, right? So that's bearish.
Bitcoin's dead.
It's dead. Yeah. RIP. For you, the thing I want to actually talk about, and this is something that's all over X, is that while Bitcoin's pumping and I'm looking at 61% dominance, the Ethereum Bitcoin is just completely dead. ETH used to be always somewhere oscillating in 2020, 2021 between like 8 to 12% of Bitcoin. And right now, I think it's around 1%. It's like 1.5% as far as the price of one Ethereum versus the price of one Bitcoin. That gap, is that going to get wider or is it going to get back to where it was in 2020 or 2021?
It's a great question. I think what we're seeing with Ethereum right now is a little bit of a revival, actually, and the price is not really reflective of all the insane kind of latent, I would say, progress that just hasn't been realized. And what I mean by that is if you actually look at the metrics on like what Ethereum is being used for, it's really ultimately it's like when L2s came onto the scene and started scaling Ethereum out, people thought that was like a bad thing a little bit for ETH, the asset. And there was a lot of like fractionalization and the ETH ecosystem kind of spread out a little bit. It wasn't really interoperable, which is still a problem to some degree or an opportunity, and then it had a lot of competition with Solana, with other faster L1s that made different trade-offs with regards to like some kind of world computer tokenization. But Ethereum has never made any sacrifices on decentralization. It has never changed the core ethos of what it was trying to do. was become that decentralized app protocol level blockchain that is resilient, that is scalable. And so what I'm all getting to here and what I'm saying is the Ethereum blockchain is going to power the financial system. And that's a bold statement. Look at what's happening with tokenization. Look at what's happening with RWAs, or as I like to call them, just assets, like real, not even real assets, just assets, right? RWAs are just assets. You look at what Kraken just released yesterday with tokenized stocks, right? X stocks. Robinhood is exploring this. It's all built on Ethereum. And Solana is great. Other L1s. I love that there's a lot of different plays on how we achieve this, but we're just starting to see now like a revival of what Ethereum always was. It's almost like an awakening, I think. And it's starting to really be deeply integrated with the world. And banks are starting to adopt. You see the Stablecoin Act going through Congress right now, or going through DC, and the kind of the process there. But um, I am insanely bullish on Ethereum. I always have been.
So yeah, I got crushed by Ethereum in 2022, 2023. And I also just felt like it was really clunky, like MetaMask, and then I'm on Arbitrum, and then I'm on some layer two, whatever.
Yeah.
And then in and around there, I was just started to dive deeper into Bitcoin. And so the irony though, and most people don't know this, and I'm going to be very transparent because I think that's a good thing here, is I now only in the last like 7 months has my Bitcoin portfolio overtaken my Ethereum portfolio, because I put a lot of my like weight of my portfolio into Ethereum in 2020. And I was like, dude, this is going to be crazy. Like, this is just, like you said, this backs everything. Now, fast forward here, we're in 2025. We've just talked about how the ETH BTC has just expanded. It's no longer 8 to 12%. It's like 1.5%. Now I'm doing napkin math. Someone will correct me. You're saying now that you're super bullish on Ethereum. I've recently listened to podcasts that are saying the same thing. People are like, it just has to play out. And I
Yeah.
feel like you're saying that same thing. It has to play out. What is the it? Can you then also more specifically, if you're talking about tokenization of basically the world, all financial assets, I love what Kraken's just done. I need to actually dive into that deeper. What is the full timeline for that to be realized? And I realize that that could take a decade, but what's a canary in the coal mine along that that's telling you that, like, holy crap, people need to wake up to Ethereum being so important to the future financial ecosystem?
Well, great question. I think it's actually finally delivering on its roadmap and what it's been setting out to do. And you look at other signals like sentiment. What are people saying about it? What are really smart people saying about it? Who's investing in it? There's been an entire shift. There's been some changes with the Ethereum Foundation. Vitalik has taken a more active role. And with it, I mean, there's marketing efforts now. They've actually invested in a BD arm that's actually going out and working with banks. And what it means is just that broader adoption to realize its full potential and embed it and weave it into the world of Ethereum powering the financial system. And the way it's playing out currently is that integration is called a DeFi mullet. So, for example, when people say this, it's like it's very important to just cover the actual definition of what that means. It means that you have a traditional, normal banking experience, financial experience in the front end, they call it. Looks like a normal haircut, right? A mullet when you look at them in the front. And then in the back, it's all powered by crypto. So when you look in the back, it's got this wild and crazy, you
I
know,
just can't. I can't.
they call it a Kentucky mud flap. They call it all kinds of things, but the mullet is
I just can't believe that that's the analogy you brought, and it works so perfectly because
that's
it
it.
is business in the front, but party in the back.
Party in the back. And
I just,
if you've been in working in crypto, you know it can be a complete, a unique, total frontier, cutting edge, like wild experience. But to give you a raw example of that, look at what what Coinbase is doing, right? So for the listeners wondering like what does this all mean? Coinbase is offering Bitcoin loans. So you can actually put up your Bitcoin as collateral and you get a loan. And the way that's powered is all through this DeFi protocol and app called Morpho. And Morpho essentially puts your DeFi, when you put your Bitcoin up for collateral, it uses this protocol on the back end, right? That's the party in the back to actually um, process and move that loan around and provide liquidity, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one example. And another example is like, um, yeah, I think just like all this movement around stablecoins. I mean, we could have an entirely separate podcast on this one, but TradFi's, DC, the United States government, even other economies are interested in stablecoins because there are unique benefits to it, and it's also like a political play in a lot of ways. Um, so it's almost like using crypto um, to help like a centralized purpose without or like have a centralized kind of adoption, like sticking like um, a use case that is digestible to the world. That's not like as so wild as something like a transformative as like Bitcoin, but stable coins can be something that's like actually usable and utility wise for the world. And that's another reason why like like banks can use it and they are starting to think about adopting it. So all that to say, it's all going to be built on Ethereum. And we're already seeing it play out.
Okay, you've said a lot there, and stablecoins could probably take up this entire conversation from what's
Yeah.
just happened in the U.S. this past week. Morpho is Morpho on Ethereum?
Morpho is on Ethereum.
Wow. Okay, so somewhere there is a Coinbase user who's a Bitcoin maximalist who's using Coinbase and is getting out a loan and does not know in the back end that the party is Ethereum because they see the front end, they see the haircut, and they're like, "Oh, look at that Chad." They do not know that in the back end it's Ethereum because many maxis want nothing to do with Ethereum.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, first of all, I got to wrap my head around that, and I want to dive into that a little bit deeper. But let's go right into stablecoins because I think that that's fascinating. This past week, and I do not have the numbers in the legislation, and it's also starting to rain, so we'll see if we need to change here. Uh, um, this past week, the legislation though went through for the stablecoins. Are you up to date on that enough to talk about it? I think I could talk about it from 30,000 feet. I'm not too granular. I've just seen a bunch of memes and I haven't honestly had the time to sit down, but can you dive into that a little bit deeper?
A little bit. So I'm pretty high level on it. What I know so far is that it's called the Genius Act, and it sets some standardization around the backing of stablecoins and setting some rules and parameters around having reserves such that if stablecoins are to be utilized and enacted, enacted into law in a way that protects consumers, that it would need to be backed. Stablecoins would need to be backed 1-to-1 to a United States dollar. So there need to be liquidity reserves, and um, Circle right now is the issuer of USDC. So there's huge implications for that one. That's kind of the leading stablecoin on Ethereum and other blockchains as well, but mostly Ethereum. And as far as like the progress on the bill, it sounds like it hit, this is the first procedural kind of check and vote. It's called a cloture, I believe, that gets it through. And the next phase, and I believe the next phase is like, it's going to go up for a vote to enact it into law, I believe. So I think it goes to like the Senate now. So it's going to go through another procedure, like voting procedure through the government, and then if it passes, it'll go into law. Um, and number go up. From there, things start looking even more promising for the on-chain economy that we're trying to build and update the financial system. So to go from like Bitcoin is dead to, just think about like the SEC and their stance on like tokenization and blockchain and how hard Gensler came after the industry. David Sachs called it the war on crypto. To now, we're close to actually passing a law making crypto a huge part of the financial system. That's insane, and that all happened in less than a year. So incredible progress, which is like so rare, I feel like, for governments to work that fast.
I think the implementation of, not the implementation, I think having USDC or USDT, those are probably the two leading ones. I'm sure, PayPal has their coin, whatever, but USDT and USDC, having that be more embedded, that's the word I want to use, into the
Yeah.
US financial system is so freaking exciting. I took out money yesterday. I'm in Colombia right now, and I have to pay something that I can only pay in cash here, more or less. It's actually more convoluted than that, and we could get into it. But the point is I had to take cash out. So I take the cash out, take out Colombian pesos, exchange my dollars for pesos, and I look at the receipt, and it basically has a 9.5% markup, or it's giving me a 9.5% negative exchange rate. So I'm losing 10% just right then. Just right then. The bank just got me. And then they have a fee on top of that to take money out. And I'm just like so excited for when the US specifically, and then this is already trickling down. It already kind of exists. Like I could probably get my landlord to download a USDC wallet. The issue for him would probably be the offboarding. I don't know if his local bank would be able to do it. He doesn't want to put it into Coinbase. So it's the
Hmm.
off-ramping, excuse me, that's always difficult. Just as difficult as the on-ramping.
Hmm.
I'm so excited for everyone around the world to use USDC on Base. It is the cleanest thing I've ever used in crypto, Bitcoin
Yeah.
included. And I'm
Hmm.
not, and I'm, anyway. So, and I've done it on this podcast. We actually did a base transaction of USDC for like $2. I sent Brian Naughton. He's over in England. We still never met, but I sent him two on base, and he was like, "This is incredible." And I saw somebody last night tweet about that. And if you've never done that, I do not care if you're watching this and you're a Bitcoin maxi. You need to figure out, go to Coinbase Wallet, get some USDC in there, do it on base. It is, I think, in the next 5 years, there will be more than 1 billion people. This is probably a wild thing. In the next 5 years, there will be more than 1 billion people using USDC on Base, especially if Base continues to be free,
Hmm.
because there's just no quicker way to move money around the world.
There's
And you
not.
could see, like Bitcoin Lightning, sure, the Lightning Network is still super kind of clunky and janky in my opinion to
Yeah.
do certain transactions. Like, yeah, it works here or there, and I know El Salvador's got it going on or whatever. Bitcoin Mainnet for me is still the most secure, but that's 10 minutes, and sometimes your transaction may not even get into a block, and there's other things going on there, right? If the mempool is backed up, but USDC on Base is really crazy. Here's a question: do you have a wallet on your phone that has some USDC just in case?
I absolutely do.
I
I
have like
absolutely do.
60, $70 sitting USDC on Base just because I
Hmm.
think it's the most powerful thing right now in crypto.
I could not agree more. I would build on that. So
Yeah.
Brian Armstrong, right? Pretty well-known figure, CEO of Coinbase. Two things. Number one, his whole vision was under 1 second, under 1 cent. We're there. The second thing, he put out a tweet yesterday. He retweeted a headline, which was Citibank, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, other banks, Bank of America are seeking to join hands and work together on a stable coin that they would all share together. And he retweeted a post where someone said, "Why don't you just use USDC on Base?"
I saw this yesterday. I saw this
You
yesterday.
saw that? Yeah.
I
And
saw
it
it.
just like I mean, there's no better alternative. And I just gave a training on this actually last week. I created this kind of user story of these two brothers. One lived in Mexico, another lived in Miami. And the brother from Miami wanted to send money to his brother in Mexico, and just on average, it's like 6% for sending over for remittance fees. So that adds up. That adds up, and it's a tax on the world, some of the world's poorest workers. It's so unfair. That is a clear problem, and it takes too long to get money around. So remittances, if you think about like use cases for stable coins, anyone listening to this, it is so taxing sending money overseas. We live in a global world. Like there's a need to send money like we send an email. Free, under 1 second, super fast. That's what crypto can do.
I think that, and I have an episode back when the show had a different name in like 2022, where I talk about how the future of social media, and this was like Nostradamus because then Elon bought X and was like, we're turning that into a financial thing because that's his like end goal. He wants to get it back to
Yeah.
like the original X, was just that every single social app will have, probably you'll have like when you create it, you'll have to KYC, I think, but like from Instagram, I'll have Ethereum, Bitcoin, and probably USDC now on base. But I was just like every single account that you have on the internet will be able to receive value. That's including
Hmm.
your email. And I don't know how far away we are from that, but I think we're approaching that destination quicker every day. And once again,
Yes.
I didn't say anything like actual. That was kind of fluff, but I could foresee a world where Venmo doesn't exist and CashApp doesn't exist
Hmm.
because right now they just kind of like sit in between the TradFi and the states. If you're stateside, if you're not
Yeah.
stateside, most other places have something that sits like that. Colombia has a couple of different apps that do that, but I could just foresee where it's just like, oh, Jon, I haven't seen you since high school, but we're friends on Facebook. Let me just, yeah, okay. Thanks for buying those beers. I owe you 10. Let me just send that over. And it's instantaneous. And it's
Yes.
also like instantaneous settlement because then it's in your wallet. The thing with Venmo that a lot of people don't get is like that settlement's still 2 or 3 days. That's the party in the back that you're not seeing. And
Hmm.
I just totally think that obviously, this is once again not mind blowing, but I think to say it is different than having it play out because like the world of middlemen is cooked. You're freaking cooked. If you are part of an ecosystem
Broadly.
that's a
Yeah.
middleman, it's over. Like, and I want to dive into AI because I want that to be the other
Yeah.
half. We're almost at 30 minutes because you've been posting a lot of stuff on AI that I think is fascinating, and it actually ties into Coinbase with what just happened with their data leak, which you made one of the best points I had seen on the internet. And I'm not saying that just because you're on mic. I've like shared that with people at Blockworks. I'm like, dude, what if this happens? But middlemen are cooked, and most banks are the biggest institution we have in the world that's a middleman. In the United States, I would argue that there's two. One of them is healthcare insurance. You don't need that. Like we should just figure out a better system there. We're not going to dive into
Ooh.
that. But the middlemen of banks, I'm trying to also wrap my head around. And here's the question. I'm finally getting to my question because I'm just blabbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question is,
No, you're good.
what does the actual world look like without banks? And I want you to talk about small business loans, student loans, if you're doing it privately. I want you to talk about mortgages. I want you to talk about
Mm.
people holding money because I still think one of the things I think that crypto is going to always fight back against that human nature is people have no accountability. People have no accountability. 95% of people on this planet want to blame everyone else for all their problems. And so
Hmm.
that to me is an issue because if you lose your wallet, if you get scammed or whatever, you have no one to look at but the mirror. And that's super tough. So knowing that, what is the actual future of the world without banks? Because I think we're approaching it asymptotically.
A world without banks is a world where individuals are empowered to be their own bank. You're going bankless. You're reaping the benefits of technology and abstracting away all of the parasitic business models that erode property rights. So, on chain, writ large, is broadly a better system to manage, protect, and enforce your own property rights. Of course, you need convenience. And of course, there is the need for average, everyday people to be able to custody their own money and access their own money in a way that doesn't put them at risk. So there's always going to need to be a way to do that digitally. And I think that, to use crypto and to reap the benefits of it, you need two things, right? You need a wallet, that's your bank account, and you need money in your bank account to reap the benefits of it. So you need cryptocurrency. The solutions around that problem space, wallets, bridging funds, getting money into that economy, is getting easier and easier and easier. Oh, well, what do you mean by that? It's a good question. I'm asking myself that.
Well, when you said that, if I can interject,
Please.
you and I are young enough to remember a time, or some with Gen Z would say we're old enough, to remember a time where the internet was difficult to deal with. I had to go and I had to use dial up, and I had to tell everyone in the house when I was like 12 years old, hey, don't pick up the phone. I would be on AIM late at night when my parents would be
Yep.
watching TV, and my sister was too young to get AIM, and I was like 11 or 12, and I'd go home and talk to my friends from middle school online. That was a very difficult thing. Getting online was actually like annoying, and I remember even if you know what I'm talking about, this is going to be some trauma shit. You had the AOL CDs, AIM, that you had to like upload into your computer to probably do a software update because the internet wasn't strong enough at that point to just like do it. So the way I think about crypto over a long enough period of time, where, as you said, it has gotten so much easier. Gosh, from first time I touched it in 2017 to now, and we're 8 years later, more or less, it's gotten easier. So, okay, so if I'm 12 and the internet is difficult, and by the time I'm 20, it's fairly easy. That's 8 years. When then is it easy? And like, once again, I'm always looking the episode Future Signal, right? The podcast, the show, the whole brand is called Future Signal. What is that future signal that really tells us that it's there? I'm thinking about the canary in the coal mine every day, because I think we've just had one of those moments for AI, and we can get into that. We only got a couple minutes left on crypto, but
Yeah.
what is the thing? What's the thing that maybe you and your crypto friends, I know your wife, obviously super Web3 literate, super crypto literate. What's the thing?
The future signal is abstraction and solving in a private and anonymous way identity online.
Give the
Yeah.
example. Give the example. Is this ZK stuff? I
Yeah.
still need to get caught up on ZK, but if you can talk about ZK, I think this is the
I
moment.
I really think that's the future. And I think a world where you don't need to know you're using crypto, and you don't need to entrust your personal data with any one service. I think that's when the promise of crypto can absolutely accelerate and be fully realized. Like deep self custody, easily accessible, billions of people using it type of stuff. It's so broad, though. I mean, there's so many different ways to approach that. But for me personally, zero knowledge, ZK, account abstraction, smart wallets, smart contract wallets, and easier on ramps. So all of that together, which I can get into, like world chain and Worldcoin. I've been posting a lot about that, and the more I learn about it, I'm like so bullish on it. I can't help it. It's so
Okay.
interesting to me. Yeah.
Okay. Let's dive right in there. And this is going to be quite the clip. I am very anti WorldCoin. Now, I'm anti
That's right.
Worldcoin from back when it started because they were just going around and queuing up people all around the world and getting iris scans.
Hmm.
And there's tons of articles out there about how they've been a part, across certain countries, and they're paying people $2 a day, basically for their genetics, which I think is same reason why I never gave my genetics to 23andMe, because I was like,
Hmm.
I can't trust some central person with my like most personal thing. I think WorldCoin is I get the vision, right? Here's the vision that I see, and I want you to correct me, right? The vision
Yeah.
is everyone is going to ascend. This is Sam Altman, right? He comes up with this. He's like, all right, this is going to be the crypto thing that goes along with OpenAI. I do believe that humans need to figure out how to give people value when they no longer have jobs. I'm working on an episode. It's going to probably be a 40-minute episode of me just talking, and I have a slideshow. Stay tuned for that. Basically about how you
Hmm.
have till 2030 to make money, because after that, I don't think you're going to be able to actually make money and build wealth. And I'm not the only one who's saying this. It's not some avant-garde
No.
thing. I'm just looking at the tea leaves, right?
Hmm.
So in that world, people are still going to probably need to pay for things, no matter, even if you live in the most democratic socialist society on earth, like some Denmark or something, or Sweden, where almost everything's covered. Even in that world, John still has a birthday. I want to go buy John his favorite beer or something. Whatever. You still need to like buy things. So
Yeah.
WorldCoin looks at that and it's like, all right, well, we need to figure out a way to uniquely identify every single human being on Earth. Well, what if we scanned their eyes? And then that would create basically a wallet for them. And then when we get to the world of UBI, or Universal Basic Income, as OpenAI grows and starts to essentially, once again, please correct me after I say this. Once OpenAI takes enough jobs, once it takes 2 billion jobs, and this is quasi hyperbole, we will be able to give money back to those 2 billion people off the profits that we've made from our AI development and progress. Something like that. Now, once again, I think the rollout has been absolutely damaging. I think it's been completely
Hmm.
taking advantage of people in the developed world, or in emerging markets. There's a billion ways to say where they are, right? And I think it's also something that I'm not excited about for crypto to be out there waving the crypto banner, because if that's
Hmm.
people's first engagement with it, it's dirty. It's the same thing I
Yeah.
think about Trump coin. I think if that's your first engagement with crypto, you just feel like it's a scam. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like it's adding any value. It doesn't feel like there are real people behind it who are spending their time building it. I feel like it's a
Hmm.
net negative for what crypto is supposed to be. And much of the
Hmm.
conversation we've already had. So anyways, that's where I am. I want you to fill in the holes that I
Yeah, it's
missed.
valid.
And then I want you to talk about why you're so bullish about it.
All I hear you, all valid points. And the first thing I would say is like I would I would touch on the point you made about genetics. So just from a technical angle, it doesn't actually store your genetics. And the orb itself, for those who are listening, and they're like, what is WorldCoin? The way it works is it scans your iris and it uses a lot of technology and a local AI model in an orb. The orb is the device that scans your iris to verify you as a human. And as soon as it scans your iris, it deletes that data from the orb, works with your app, which you use to verify yourself as a human. And that actually is what on ramps you into the crypto economy. And so I'm someone who has been trying to onboard people into the crypto economy forever, for not ever, but for the last like 4 years, professionally and personally.
That is ever, by the way. In crypto, 4 years is
Yeah, in
like 20
crypto,
years. So
I'm
that's a
true.
whole cycle. So
Yes. And I have to just say on the first on one point is that it is an effective way to on-ramp people into the crypto economy because it gives you that world coin, which is what happens after you verify as a human. And I just did this 2 weeks ago. I went to an orb, verified myself, and I earned coins, which have now appreciated that I can go and swap and use for US dollars or whatever. So it's an instant on-ramp into the crypto economy. Does everyone have that opportunity across the world if they have a bank? Or if they don't have a bank, or if they have whatever? How do they get into crypto? So that's one thing, is just like the on-ramping part of it. The orb itself doesn't store your genetic data. It creates a hash of your iris data,
Okay.
and then it deletes it locally from the orb. So it doesn't store any data. It's actually more privacy preserving, in fact, than signing up for Coinbase. And we know what happened there, right?
Also, ex Coinbase employee alert. Love this. Continue.
So they're all about the problem they're trying to solve is, I would actually say it's not about UBI and like post AI apocalyptic scenario where like we just need to give money to people. I think of WorldCoin as like an incentive to create a human only network that preserves anonymity and privacy online because they don't have your data. They just use this orbed physical technology and the right biometrics to actually verify that you're a human. And then it's all done through zero knowledge proofs. Their orb is entirely open source and they're audited by third party IT firms that verify, like, yeah, they're actually protecting people's data. So if you think that anonymity and and adequate privacy is important for the internet, then there are reasons to believe that this, I would call it experimental approach, might just work out. Are they doing things that are not that are questionable in maybe developing countries and like exploiting people? I don't think they're forcing it. I don't think they're going to these people and saying like, "We need you to do this." I think there's always a choice, but let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah, but see, that's where, and I remember, so we did an episode, and I'll post this episode below because I got pretty animated about this because at the time, I mean, there was obviously there's two sides to every coin, right? But at the time, it was just like you read this article, and it's like I think as someone who works still because I'm doing a consultancy right now with an organization in Guatemala. I think that the idea of free choice is a privilege. And the idea of choice is a privilege. And so if you go into a community and you go to a place that is poor, I'll use that word. Sometimes you'll say economically depressed. You come up with all these other fun things. They're freaking poor.
Yeah.
They're time poor. They're economically poor. They're health poor on every level. And you say, yeah, why don't you queue up because they have nothing else to do. And because there's no jobs or whatever that day, or it's raining, so they can't go to work, whatever, the road's washed out, whatever. They're just there. And you say, we're going to put this orb up. If anyone who wants to come around and scan their eye and get $5, you can, go ahead and do that. That's like going into a place where there's starvation and putting food down and being like, they had a choice not to eat it. That's kind of where I come from. Having worked in many communities all throughout the developing world, the relationship between the foreigner who's not even directly, they could even be local, but they're not from that community, and the people coming in from outside, I just think that there's such a thing there that is so difficult for people to understand until you've kind of like done it a lot to even understand. And also you'll do it enough to where you don't understand, right? The best things in the world, I could live in Colombia the rest of my life. I'm never going to understand certain things, only the things in the place where I was raised in Massachusetts. And even then there are things that happen. And I'm like, shaking my head. So I think it was very, very hierarchical for them to go into certain places and be like, well, you had a choice. Because choice is just so privileged. You and I are in crypto for so long. And the one thing that we're building all the time, whether we know it or not, is we're just building more opportunity. And some people on the planet have 0 choices. Let's say they have 3 choices. You and I probably 100 choices. And then there's people who have 1 billion choices. And so I just find that argument, it falls a little deaf on me. And the thing that really pushed for me was that they went in there and they had no development professional. And I just think if you're going to go into another country, especially as a U.S. citizen or U.S. company, the levels of like technological imperialism that exists there, I've just seen it, and so it's just tough. And so that's where I push back. It's interesting. I want to continue though. It's interesting you're saying that they create a hash, the hash is deleted locally. I want to learn more about that because if that's the case, then I think it's different. It's way better than 23andMe. Not saying that that's a pretty low bar, but and I'm also not sure if the word genetics is right. I think biometrics is probably more accurate. So okay, you're saying it's not for UBI because that was the story that I read when it kind of came out. And it was like, we're going to have to figure out a way to allow people to have economic value once enough jobs get taken away. So if that's not the point, is the point then to just onboard people into crypto and pump a coin? Like what for you then is the mission and vision of WorldCoin?
Well, you think about what's a core problem of the internet is bots and Sybil, right? And I'll just give two examples. In dating apps, people get convinced that they're talking to a human. It's got to be a human on the other side of it, right? That you're conversing with and matching with. Well, it's actually not the case. There's a lot of instances where people get, I believe the term is catfished, or there's some way where they're just like, they're actually talking to like an actual bot. And so if you are someone who believes that the internet is going to be completely infiltrated in the future, here's my future signal. If you're someone like me who thinks that deepfakes are going to get even better, that someone will be able to clone your voice and call a bank on your behalf once they have some of your data and be able to use your own voice, once they know your address. If you're someone whose data got hacked like mine did in the Coinbase leak that just happened, now they know my address. And so what's impossible in a scenario where AGI is here? And so just think about that for a second. What is that differentiator and that separator between a human being and someone that is online as a human being and someone who is online as an agent that is a complete digital twin of that human being? Is how do you differentiate them? And that's something that like WorldCoin is helping Match.com and I believe Tinder with right now. The other thing is gaming. So gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry, e-gaming or esports. One of the problems there is you actually have competitive gamers who do this for a living that are finding themselves playing computerized bots, and the bots are winning. So it's like going to like an NBA game and you're like you have 1,000 like Michael Jordan trained robots and that's the team you're playing. And it's like that's not fair. That's not cool. Like that's not how you actually like build esports up to be an even bigger like industry. So it's solving problems like that I think are primary, like toward like internet level problems. In an AGI world, it just so happens that I think like a secondary effect of that is, or a secondary kind of experiment or problem space to explore is like in the non-zero chance that AGI actually does fucking completely wipe out jobs, excuse my language, in a non-zero chance, and just look at the progress. It compounds every 3 months, doubles every 3 months. What if there is a world where you actually do need some money, or you need a way to like, you want to explore ways to just give people money? And it's not just open AI. AI is out of the box. It's open source. So it's not just open AI going out and saying, and Sam Altman saying like, I'm going to give people money. Um, I think just like the movement itself is so powerful that it's probably a good idea to explore having some kind of way to figure out who the hell is a human and who isn't. And in that world, if they even better if they have a crypto wallet or some kind of way to tap into that network with and blend it with finance, then there's really powerful things you can do because that's the Web3 world we're moving towards. It's all going to be everything's going to have a financial component on the internet in the future. So that's kind of how I think about it.
I've been thinking you hit on like 4 different points. One, I'm going to go point by point and answer point by point. Otherwise, I'm going to get lost. One, how did you know that your information was exposed in that Coinbase hack? Did you get a message from them?
Hmm.
Okay, you got an
Yeah.
email or something.
Hmm.
Okay. Two, figuring out who's a human and who's not a human on the internet is, as you've said, super important. And so for that, I will say I think WorldCoin has a very novel solution to that, which is the scanning. I will say though that I've also read that the scanning doesn't all like two people can match. That's happened. And that's happened forever in biometrics where people will have like a similar face or people even have fingerprints. It's very low, right? It's a very low chance. I'm talking like winning the mass lottery or like some Powerball lottery, but that is interesting, and I'm interested to see how that continues. Because could there be a situation in the future where there's no middlemen, as we've talked about, there's no customer service to call, and you go to scan your eye, and it's like you already exist in the system, and like, how do you? Okay, I guess I just it's like it's beyond bankless at that point. So that's one. And then the other thing, and I think I want to slide into this because you used to work at Coinbase. Coinbase just got hacked. And one of the things with Coinbase's hack that was so interesting for me was what you said. And now I'm pulling it up. I had it up and now it's lost. But you were basically like, look, and maybe actually you want to speak about this. If you want to draw, it said, this is huge. It means dead. No, that's something different. Sorry, that was about AI. But
Hmm.
basically, Coinbase gets hacked. From what I understand, Coinbase has customer support in different parts of the world, just taking advantage of people who speak English, paying them good
Yeah.
salaries, and then they're online. This happens across the tech industry, primarily because it's cheaper for tech companies to do this, but also because it allows a workforce to probably be online 24/7. People can be online in India while people in the US are asleep. This has been going on since the dawn of the internet, and you could like have people work for you in code. What I understand, there were customer support people or Coinbase employees, whether 1099 or other, who had access, who basically they got incentivized with money to allow bad actors to get into Coinbase's system and pull information out. Is that right?
Hmm.
First of all, is that right? More or less.
More or less.
Okay.
Yeah. The customer's information was leaked from these, they call them CX agents, customer experience agents.
Customer
Um,
experience. Right.
yeah. Yeah.
So I can't find the tweet, and I don't want to look at my phone the whole time here. But you said something this is what I talked about earlier when I was like, holy shit. You said basically, TLDR, you can't bribe an AI agent the same way you can bribe a CX service person who's working overseas. Because I totally see the math there. If I'm working for Coinbase and I'm working customer support and I'm living in Colombia and I'm making $350 a month or even $500 a month, and somebody comes along and they're like, here's $10,000, right? Here's
Hmm.
20 months salary. All you have to do is basically help us out and look the other way. And then they get to ask Coinbase for a ransom of 20 million. That maths, right? Like I get like, follow the incentives as they say. So
Always.
with that, I think your tweet was, and hopefully you remember the tweet, but it was basically like, is this setting the precedent for Coinbase and others to not have people overseas in the Philippines and in India primarily? That's where a lot of the VAs come from, the virtual assistants come from, to just say,
Yeah.
we're just going to have agents. Is that, yeah, you want to build on
It's
that?
exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think that I think that Coinbase should invest in technology that makes this whole thing impossible. And they've always been on the frontier of just building net new technologies and protocols even that help bring about a more equitable internet. I always like to think of them as a cybersecurity firm, not even necessarily a crypto exchange. Cybersecurity is number one for them. As a former employee, I know firsthand how serious they are about protecting customers' money, their accounts, their systems. They just don't have strong CX, customer experience. And yeah, their customer experience agents like should have been trained in the absence of having a technology solution that helps with customer support, i.e., like an actual agent that's trained not to do this, not to give away customer information. But yeah, I just think like, I mean, this is just around like the core problem is like KYC, right? And like It's just like we shouldn't need to. They should. We should not need to have like 3,000 different websites that we share our personal information with. This is where like ZK shows up, like zero knowledge again. Here I go again. Just identity online in Web 2 and Web 3 just needs to be solved. And so my broad point here with this is just like, I think that Coinbase should create some kind of like, or collaborate towards some kind of open source new standard for how we house and keep and share our identity online. And ideally, it's done through a mix of AI and crypto. In an open source way, that's an entirely new identity protocol because this shit sucks. Like, people will die. There's actually serious implications for this type of thing. And if you're paying attention, you know like what's been going on in France with kidnappings, what's been going on in I think in Canada, a crypto founder got assaulted or kidnapped. So it's a very real problem. And yeah, it's all just I could see Coinbase investing here.
I love that basically Coinbase needs to invest whatever they need to invest to make sure that this never happens again. But not even that there's like a non-zero chance of it ever happening. And I couldn't agree more. Since it's happened, I have to check my email. I've been really bad at looking at my personal email. I don't believe I've gotten that, but what I have gotten is a bunch of texts to the number that is on the
Yeah.
Coinbase. That's just from Coinbase, and these are what the texts read. I'm sure I have so many of them. I try to delete them when they come through, but they're just like, Coinbase, your withdrawal code is da 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 da. Do not share this code with anyone. Da da da. If this wasn't you, call. And if you call that number, it will be a phishing scam. I
Yes.
have an episode that I will put in the show notes that I recorded one of these scammers who said that they were from Coinbase. I have about 15 minutes of the
Wow.
30-minute conversation recorded, and it's creepy. And I have a little of the audio in the episode, but the guy was like, it was a human. I don't believe it was an agent because I could hear him breathing. There were like certain things that AI hasn't started to do at least. And
Hmm.
he was like, yeah, so okay, it's Saturday. So like, you got any plans? And I was like, yeah, man. Like, and I knew it was a scammer at this point. I'm like, I was just like trying to play. He was like, yeah, I got to take the kids to play soccer tomorrow. I'm hoping they win or something. It was just so creepy that this guy is sitting
Unbelievable.
somewhere, perfect US accent, somewhere in the US, and knows that if he makes 100 calls of these a day, he's going to get two or three to
Yep.
work. And
Yep.
it's just, once again, it's a numbers game in the math. If the maths and the incentives align. So I'm glad we
100%.
talked about that because I think that you are spot on. And has anyone in Coinbase retweeted that, reached out to you, said anything?
No, they haven't. And I think there's already like a lot of stuff in the works with regards to like just identity online. I know Google is working. They're starting to explore ZK technology around identity. So I'm hopeful. I'm definitely optimistic that this is going to be a solved problem. But and I don't even know if it's Coinbase's like kind of sandbox to play in or a strength even. But as long as they protect funds, that's first and foremost. But no one's reached out. But I'm welcoming anyone who wants to chat about it. Totally down to chat.
Yeah, talking about France, I believe it was one of the Ledger co-founders. Is that right? He got
Correct.
kidnapped, and I think his wife also got like it was bad, and I think he's got like fingers cut off and sent like
Hmm.
as a proof of life. It is something I say a lot, but if you're watching this and it's the year 2031, I will no longer be making content. I think after the next halving, I'm going to disappear from the internet because basically people will just assume that I'm some crypto rich dude or Bitcoin rich. And the reality of it is, relatively, maybe I am, but like once again, even just having $2,000 in most countries in this world, people will kill you for that. Like
Oh yeah.
that's not even hyperbole. And I would even say
No.
shit, parts of the US. If someone's really down bad and they're like, you're gonna pull a trigger to get some guy and it's $5,000, like, all right. So anyways,
Yep.
that was a darker turn than I wanted to take. I wanted to now, and we don't have too much time because we need to keep to an hour more or less. We may go a little over if you're down for it. AI.
Sure.
We've kind of gone nicely into AI here. AI, and I think it's the new upgrade, and I need to play with this. And this is one of the reasons why I actually left Compass Mining, and I'll share that. I left Compass Mining because I was making content there and I was the video guy. I was doing this, right? But I think this gets replaced for a company. They won't need to have the podcast guy other than having the ego and the network that that person brings. You could just create that in about 6 months anyways if you run ads, and you can just create the avatar. But what is the thing? I'm trying to find the is it Google's, I want to say it's VO3?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So there's crazy videos that I've seen on the internet that look so real, and they were literally made with like a text prompt. So it's like, dude goes to the grocery, picks up an orange and throws it against a wall. I'm just making shit up. And it looks shockingly real. And so that goes back to the conversation of being able to prove humanity on the internet is becoming more and more important. Andy Bryant, who normally comes on this podcast and talks about AI, said this past year he thought AI was going to ruin the election. I don't really think it played a huge role, to be 100%. But I think in this next election, we already live in a world with no truth in the United States, with lies being told all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really, really worry. But we have a little bit of time. Do you want to talk about some of the video and some of the other stuff and just AI and like this idea of AI agents and all this?
VO now does audio as well, just to build on that.
I know.
So you've seen these videos where it's like someone prompts pretend like a stand-up comic is at a comedy shop and
we've seen the same ones because I've seen a couple,
Yeah.
and the guy tells actually a pretty funny joke. I was
Yeah.
waiting. It was like a dad joke, but it was a good one. I'll have to find it, but it was a good one.
Completely. So this is just giving you a taste, right? I mean, imagine where if AI, compounds and doubles and gets better every 3 months or so. And remember Dolly, when Dolly came out? Dolly was like the original like image model from OpenAI. Going from that to this in 2-3 years, Dolly came out in like what, 2022? I mean, it's
2023 early, I think. Yeah.
something like that. So, I mean, dude, it's over. Like content production with like video, it's going to be so realistic and so much. You're going to be able to prompt movies. You're going to be able to do anything. You're going to be able to imagine any deep fake you want of any person ever. Take a picture of me, you. In the future, they could take this podcast input, the media, the audio, the visuals, and create another podcast. So that's just, I mean, some reflections on like where we're at. I mean, it's only a matter of time before it's like at a tipping point and gets insane. And a lot of people in the world community, just take 5 seconds here. They believe that once there's an open source model out there that lets people use a VO like interface and a VO like experience to create any video whatsoever, it's just going to take off. Like it's over at that point. Like everything is going to be on the internet. They believe, a lot of people believe it's just going to be mostly like AI content. And then you talked about voting too. So that's another use case.
Yeah, we talked about voting. We just talked about, influencing elections. And I
Uh-huh.
think like somewhere 35% plus of the information that's on the internet was created by bots. It basically wasn't created by humans at this point. And that number by the end of 2025, at least this was like the prognostications from 2024. So it was around 50, 55%. And this is why I'm literally at Blockworks now doing podcast production behind the scenes, because I know that this grill, as you just said, someone could take it and just make it, and they can just take my voice. My voice is already easy to clone because it's all over the internet, and you could have enough hours to like get it perfect. So that's why for some of my friends and family, like they know that if I call them asking for $2,000 because I was kidnapped in Costa Rica and in Ethereum, they have questions to ask. And everyone needs to have that with people close to them. You need to like sit down, especially because I travel a bunch and I'm just kind of moving around and people don't know. And, it would be totally reasonable for for me to call and be like, hey man, can you send me some ETH? I'll drop you my address, that to a couple of my friends would seem like another Tuesday, okay, well, he broke down or something. His credit cards got stolen and now he needs some, value. And he found a guy who can, off ramp the ETH and give him some local currency. everyone listening to this, and I'll probably say this now in every single episode, this is like the new not financial advice, right? You need to have code with the people closest to you that they understand. And like I have it. And I'm going to continue to reiterate with my friends and family, the closest ones who would probably get these calls, that this is the new normal.
Wow.
So
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Do you have any of that? Because I think you
I
should.
hadn't thought of that. I think you're right. I think I should have that. It's almost like a shared private key or a passcode or something like, hey, if it's me and I'm asking for money, make sure that you ask for the passcode or
Yeah.
something like that.
And
Something
it
simple.
doesn't
Yeah.
even need to be that crazy. Like I can almost give them away, but you can't figure them out. And one of them is like, when was the last time we drank alcohol together?
Yeah.
Tell me about that
Yeah.
in vivid detail, because
Yeah.
that's so unique. You know, where were we? What was I drinking? And what did we eat after?
Yeah.
AI can try as hard as they want, and they can't figure that out for my closest friends. You know what I mean? And my family. And so, even if you're drinking every day and you're a raging alcoholic, and you just saw this person 2 weeks ago, they're gonna probably remember. Oh, we were at so and so grill. You got the burger, but you sent it back, and you had two Coronas or something. That's enough. Like AI is not creating that. Maybe in any time, unless obviously there's like CCTV everywhere and they literally
Yeah.
know
Unless they're
everything.
watching you.
Unless they're watching, but that will take a lot of time. So, anyways, there's like certain
Yeah.
things that I think you set up. You can obviously have like a certain code, but like birthdays are out now, phone numbers
Oh,
are out.
birthdays are up.
Most things like naming your pet may even be out because people use it so freaking often in passwords. And
Yeah.
so you really need to think about, the other thing I think, and I'll just say this, you could ask someone to tell you about something that never happened. Hey, John, when we went to Fenway to see the Red Sox last summer, who won, the Orioles or the Red Sox? Hey,
That's a
we
good
did,
one.
we didn't do that. Okay. Okay. What did we do last summer? We didn't see each other last summer. We've actually never met, So anyways, I think everyone needs to think about that. Especially people like, you and your wife who are crypto literate. It's not out of the blue for you to call her and say, hey, I'm down in Sedona. I lost my wallet, but I got my phone. Can you base USDC me 500? And it's a video. I don't think your wife would really balk at that more than twice. She'd be like, okay, yeah, let me do that. I'm dropping the kids off. Gotcha.
Yep. 1000%. All great points. I totally agree with you. It's all about trust online, fundamentally, right? Trust online. And I'll say one line that Balaji, former CTO of Coinbase and has done a bunch of stuff in the crypto community. He says AI makes everything easy to create and crypto makes it hard or something. Like it was something like, I'm botching it, but it was like basically you have crypto there to verify and to give you ground truth on what's real or not. So that's where the interplay I think is so fascinating. And like even simple things like what you're saying is like just have some offline or even like true like proof of offline interaction, you know?
Proof of offline. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the crazy thing is I think you could come up with a consulting company right now and you could go with that and call it proof of offline. And it would be very similar to like Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Inception, where he's like trying to protect people in their dreams. Cause you could probably have enough crypto people to be like, we're going to create certain systems for you and your family and friends that are second nature to them now, just to protect you and protect them. Because I
Yeah.
read the other day what Brian Armstrong spending $7 million a year for personal security. I don't know
Yeah.
many people that can do that. He's a billionaire, so he can do that. But as
Yeah.
people also get into crypto, I think as more people get into crypto, we're going to need certain IRL and digital kind of fail safes and guardrails. And while it is trust, I love basically what Balaji is saying is you can trust AI if you want to, but you have to verify through crypto. And that always
Yes.
goes back to a protocol level, like a hash which is why Bitcoin is so impressive, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. You can't fake math. You can't
you, you,
fake math.
you can't. You can try though.
You could try.
I was gonna say you could try. But anyways, we are over. We're at an hour. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll put your Twitter and I'll put all your contact info in. I actually like this episode because we covered a lot. My God, we covered a lot. I'm already thinking about all the clips. Anything you want to end on? Any final point, something we didn't touch upon from this week so we can kind of encapsulate it?
Stay curious. Stay curious.
Stay curious.
And think about the future. Think about what you want to be in this world. And stay curious to learning about the technologies that are shaping the future.
Couldn't agree more. The slogan for Future Signal is learning about tomorrow's tech today is a cheat code. It's quite simple.
That.
So you've just, summed that up. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and leave a comment below about any of this stuff. Where were we be wrong? Where were we right? If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please subscribe. Make sure you're following us at Future Signal XYZ across socials. Jon, you'll probably be back soon. Thanks so much for hopping on.
Thank you, Jarrett. Appreciate you.